Chapter 40, Episode 40, Honeymoon 1. 10 hours before Cordelia's letter was found in Count H.R. Svelga's guest room. Cordelia placed the stationery on the bed and pouted. But you know, what is it? Why does it have to me again? When they jumped off the cliff in the middle of the Belkin Mountains, when she said that she wanted to go to Count H.R. Svelga's territory with him, and now they were eloping. No, they were just running away together, or more like they just want to get out of here. Well, that's how it is. That what? Cordelia asked as her eyes narrowed. If there was no good reason, the look in her eyes seemed to clearly say that he should be prepared for the consequences. Because of that, Jude unconsciously gulped, but soon said with a cunning smile. Cordelia, imagine it in your head. There's a beaker full of ink, and there's a glass rod. I'm imagining it. Yes, now dip the glass rod into the beaker and then take it out. What will happen then? The glass rod will turn black, right? It'll be covered in ink. Yes, then dip it in one more time and take it out. What will happen again? It's still black, isn't it? That's correct. That's no F***ck. I mean, the first offense stood out in the past, so if we do it 3 or 4 more times. That's all you wanted to say, you're all talk. The enraged Cordelia began to seriously smack Jude's back with her palm. Hey, it hurts, it really hurts. It hurts when I hit you, really. Cordelia, who had been slapping Jude's back, tried to kick Jude's shin, but he was faster. Pack. 24 gale steps. At that moment, there was a gust of wind as Jude's foot became blurred, and Cordelia's kick only hit the air. Hey, what dirty trick are you using to avoid it? Is that your new skill? It hurts when I get hit, okay? Cordelia's hand was more painful than he thought. As Jude shifted his position with an urgent look on his face, Cordelia sighed and said as she placed her hands on her hips. Anyway, this is extremely embarrassing. But you're pretty much used to it now. No, it's not something to get used to. Jude cowered and Cordelia sighed again, then approached Jude and asked. By the way, what was you planning to do? It doesn't end with just simply leaving Count H.R. Svelga's territory. They had to prepare many things for their journey to Frost Anvil. And the Jude that Cordelia knew was not a man who acted without any plans. First, we ought to be prepared. Measures to protect against the cold are necessary, and in order to get out of Vedafalnia safely, we need a way to cross the city walls, horses for the 2 of us, and various travel supplies. It was a reasonable plan. But there was a problem. We don't have any money. The money from home had already been spent on hiring wizards at Langesthay. The money that Count Chase gave them when they left Langesthay had almost been spent, because they bought various kinds of equipment. Moreover, money was not their only problem. It was midnight now. There was only one business type that was open even after the sun sets, which was the entertainment district, where one can enjoy various kinds of entertainment, such as drinking and gambling. They didn't have the time to wait until morning too. The time Lucas gave to Jude and Cordelia for their tour was only a few hours ahead. So come closer. You're doing it again, it's just the 2 of us here in the first place. Well, it's the mood. Regardless of the mood. Cordelia grumbled, but she soon got closer to Jude and brought her ears closer. And after a while, a bright smile spread over Cordelia's face when she heard Jude's words. Mick was a professional crook. His specialty was marriage fraud. With his natural-born handsome face, flowery language and eloquence that he gained through years of training, he specialized in wheedling innocent virgins and widows suffering from loneliness. And he was now thrown down and being trampled by an incomparably beautiful girl. How did you know where I am? From the victims of fraud among them, you can get clues by talking to the redhead, Mayor Ibel. There was also the neighborhood rascal he picked a fight with on the day he first met Mick. The name of that neighborhood scoundrel was Vic. If you look a little around the back alleys of Vedafalnia, you can meet him, and when you beat him, he tells an interesting story about Mick. Of course, that alone doesn't tell Mick's whereabouts. Mick is a shrewd guy, but it doesn't mean he has very little income. Marriage fraudsters do not stay in one place for long, and Mick is one of the few guys who came from another place. Of course, these guys need the help of the locals in order to adapt to the city. Vic is the guy who teaches him how to contact the locals. The local's name is Carl, Insane Knife Carl. Now then, if you grill Carl, he will tell you about Mick, where he came from and where he is now, but it takes too long to go through all of that process, so I just straight up came here. Listening to that long story stupefied the minds of those present there. And Cordelia spoke with a dizzy expression. Jude Wiki is weird. The important thing is that we caught him. After hearing Cordelia's words, Jude squatted in front of Mick, whose head was on the floor, and spoke. If you catch Mick, you have two choices. One is to put him in jail, and the other is to continue the new linked quest. Vedafalnia is a bustling city, and like a thriving city, a lot of criminals are also gathered, and one of them wants Mick. To be exact, that person wants him as a gift to the head of the Thieves' Guild in Langersthai. W.H. What? Mayor Ibel is the youngest sister of the head of the Thieves' Guild in Langersthai. Jude's bright smile made Mick's handsome face turn pale, and Cordelia immediately spoke after casting Paralyze magic on him. Jude. Yes. You just wanted to do that, didn't you? Narrating line by line the entire process of catching Mick. What, maybe it's a habit. Huh. Well, we caught him, so let's go. We don't have much time. They had to leave Vedafalnia before dawn at the latest. Okay, let's go. To Fabian's lair, one of Vedafalnia's gangs. The two then hastened their movements. Fabian was a successful transport dealer. People, money, letters, drugs, dangerous goods, and so on. It was good to say that he would transport anything as long as it makes money. And he was now facing in front of him, while still in his pajamas, an absolutely handsome boy and an incomparably beautiful girl. So, you're going to give Mick to me as a present? Yes, Fabian. Jude immediately answered. However, his gaze was not on Fabian, but on Fabian's living room and his men that he urgently summoned. To be exact, it was towards the blonde woman sitting by the window. Where are you looking? No, it's okay, I think he already knows. The blonde woman said with a smile as she stood up from her seat. And at her hand gesture, the big-bellied middle-aged man who was the fake Fabian bowed once and stepped back. The real Fabian was a blonde beauty in her mid-20s. Among the characters that appeared in Vedafalnia, she became very popular because of her extraordinary beauty, but in Jude's eyes, her beauty was nothing. Cordelia is much prettier. Jude unconsciously compared her to Cordelia as he maintained a calm and composed expression. The real Fabian made a bubbly smile as she spoke while showing her hands. So how did you know that I'm the real Fabian? It's a cliché, and our wiki is freaking awesome. Cordelia replied with a smile as she trampled on Mick. Fabian frowned as she wondered what the other was talking about, before speaking with a smile again. Humph, I think I know the two of you too. No, should I say that you are nobles, you're members of the 12 families. Do you know us? They've never seen Fabian before. Moreover, it was their first time in Vedafalnia. When Cordelia blinked in surprise and asked, Fabian shrugged and answered. Jude Bear and Cordelia Chase, a black-haired and green-eyed, absolutely handsome boy, and an incomparably beautiful girl known to be madly in love with each other. The two of you actually look more beautiful than the rumors, but frankly, I didn't know until you two showed up. She would not have been sure if only one of them showed up. However, a noticeable, absolutely handsome boy and an incomparably beautiful girl suddenly appeared together, so she couldn't help but think of the two people from the rumors. Their hair and eye colors were also the same. When Fabian pointed it out, Cordelia was flattered at first, but soon had an anxious look on her face. Hey, what do we do? She wasn't talking about Fabian figuring out their identities. The problem was the fact that people would figure out where they went, based on their identities. After all, they were currently running away at night. Don't worry about it because we can just disguise ourselves. Jude replied with a glance that seemed to say that it wasn't a big deal, before he looked back at Fabian and spoke. Okay, since you know who we are, it'll be easier to talk to each other. Let's speak without reservations and not drag this out. I'll hand over Mick, so give us what we want. What does the young master and miss want? Before dawn comes, we want a means to cross the walls of Vedafalnia and a horse to ride around, plus some basic travel supplies and plain travel clothes to change into. You're a transport dealer, so you can do all of these, right? This was the reason why Jude chose the marriage fraudster Mick among the various events in Vedafalnia. It was only Fabian, the transport dealer, who was able to surely and quickly prepare the things that Jude had wanted at this time of night. I can do it. Then, please. Well then, now that I think about it, the children of the 12 families wouldn't be in a situation where they committed a sin and needed to run away. Are you two going on a honeymoon trip then? No, we're not. Yes. Cordelia and Jude simultaneously gave conflicting answers, and Fabian burst into laughter. How cute. Fabian nodded again, after alternately appreciating the sight of a red-faced Cordelia and Jude, who cleared his throat. Good, I like it. I'm talking about the gift too. I'll prepare what you asked for right away. Rather than be on bad terms, it would be better if the children of the 12 families are indebted to me. It's not a debt though, isn't it a deal? Then let's call it a friendship. When Cordelia refuted it, Fabian cheerfully spoke again as she looked at her with affectionate eyes, before looking back at Jude and asking him. Hey, she's so lovely, can I hug the lady just once? I'm fine with it, but you'll have a hard time asking her to. Jude shamelessly replied, and Cordelia snarled at their stupid talk, while Fabian burst into laughter again. Ah, really, I like the two of you so much, more than the rumors. Cordelia asked with an upset face when she heard Fabian mention rumors again. Hey, what were those rumors that came about? If I remember, it was about how you're completely like a parakeet couple who can't stay away from each other and will die if they can't live together. Ah, there's also a story that the lady is more active than the young master. Is that true? Instead of answering, Cordelia stared at Jude with cold eyes, and Jude cleared his throat and said, Anyway, I'd like you to hurry up. All right, I'll get started right away. Fabian clapped her hands and glanced at her subordinates, and the preparations proceeded quickly. After all, Fabian and her men were professionals. I'll specially guide you myself. Vedafalnia was a trading city, and like most trading cities were, there were many places in the wall that were neglected except for the main gate. Arriving on the outskirts of the city with Jude and Cordelia, Fabian passed through the dog hole in the wall, hidden between wooden boxes. There's only one horse, but he's a sturdy one, so it wouldn't be a problem if two people ride on him. The luggage bag is filled with basic travel items such as sleeping bags, water bottles, tableware, and so on. I also filled it with 3 days' worth of food. In front of a small hut outside, the walls stood a large saddle-mounted horse and Fabian's men. I recommend that the lady sit in front. Why? Cordelia was already agonizing over who should sit in front, so she curiously asked Fabian, who replied with a big smile. It's more romantic because you'll be in the young master's arms. I'll ride in the back. Well, that's good too, because the lady will be the one doing the hugging. Can't you just get one more horse? It's a joke, so don't be swayed by it. Jude cut off the conversation between the two and approached Fabian as he said, It's a deal, but I'm grateful for the fact that it was a good deal. Because you and the young lady are likely to be good trading partners. As she had said before, it would be better for her to not be on bad terms with the children of the 12 families. Despite her attitude, Jude still liked Fabian, so he decided to show her some kindness. Fabian, come closer for a second. Isn't the lady watching you? Just stop the nonsense. Fabian smiled with her eyes and brought her face closer, and Jude whispered to her. Gilto is a traitor. He's holding hands with Bartu behind the scenes to hit you in the back. At Jude's words, Fabian widely opened her eyes. Her eyes were full of questions about how he knew, but Jude didn't bother answering her. Look into it, it will be as I said. That was the end of their conversation. Jude lightly got on the horse and reached out to Cordelia. Get in front. HMPH. Cordelia snorted after her resistance failed, and soon sat in front of Jude, who took the horse's reins. As they were children of nobles, both Jude and Cordelia knew how to ride on horses. However, Cordelia suspected that Jude already knew how to ride on horses in his previous life. I'll be going then, may good fortune always be with you. Not muscles. As if to stop Cordelia's small murmur, Jude immediately got the horse to move. Fabian stood with a stiff face as she saw the two off, and soon loosened her expression. They're just like the rumors. They really were a fantasy couple. Fabian shrugged before ordering her subordinates to investigate Gilto's actions behind the scenes. Chapter 41, Episode 41, Honeymoon 2. Terms used in this chapter. Molecular gastronomy, a subdiscipline of food science that seeks to investigate the physical and chemical transformations of ingredients that occur in cooking. Ramyun, Korean word for instant noodles. It's the Korean version of the Japanese's ramen. It is made by boiling a pre-cooked and dried noodle block with flavoring powder or sauce. Binyeo, a Korean traditional hairpin used to hold a woman's hair bun in place, the white hairpin in the picture. Kinggong, this had been mentioned in previous chapters, but here's a recap. It's a martial arts skill in wuxia stories that allows you to circumvent gravity to fly, cover tremendous distances in a single stride, run across surfaces of water, mount trees, and jump over or scale high walls. For this chapter, Jude used the cover tremendous distances in a single stride. The next morning, after Cordelia's letter was found in Count H.R. Svelga's guest room, the Count tried to respond as calmly as possible. I have to find them. Whether they left on their own or not, if some accident happened to Jude and Cordelia, Count H.R. Svelga had no choice but to take responsibility for it. In any case, the two were minors, so Count H.R. Svelga ideally had the responsibility to protect the two who were invited as guests. Why, what the hell did you do while the kids left the house? Are the walls of Count H.R. Svelga that low? Of course, it was unlikely that Count Bayer or Count Chase would say such words themselves, but they would put the blame on him with a roughly similar remark. The potential discord among the 12 northern families wasn't the only problem. What should we do if those two get caught by the devil's hand? Lucas spoke to everyone with a face full of worry, and the faces of Count Bayer's and Count Chase's knights all turned miserable. They couldn't have gone that far. Let's steadily find them around the city. When one of Count H.R. Svelga's knights intentionally spoke in a lively manner, the other knights were also motivated. Regardless, they had to find the two people first. But contrary to everyone's expectations, Jude and Cordelia had already gone quite far. 5 days from their elopement, Count H.R. Svelga was still searching the villages near Vedafalnia, but Jude and Cordelia had reached near the northwestern border where Frost Anvil was located. That smells delicious. It was morning, and Cordelia sniffed in front of the campfire while still in her sleeping bag. She had just woken up, her hair was untidy, and she had no makeup on, but as an incomparably beautiful girl, she was still pretty and lovely. Are you awake? I'm awake. What is it for this morning? Cordelia faintly smiled as she saw the hard-working Jude cooking in front of the campfire. When Jude and Cordelia left Vedafalnia, Fabian gave them only one luggage bag, but in the last 5 days, their household items have pretty much increased. Magic Blaze Expansion Bag, Special Insect-Repelling Incense. The Magic Blaze, also called a portable burner, was received in exchange for helping Koblo escape. The Expansion Bag, which can store double its size, was received in exchange for finding the memento of Yinsen's lost mother. The Special Insect-Repelling Incense was made from ingredients that Jude had collected during their trip. And there were many other items. 5 days ago, they were barehanded when they left Count H.R. Svelga's territory, but now Jude and Cordelia were unbelievably well supplied for their journey. A man who has the ability to maintain a livelihood is the best, the #1 ideal husband. Okay, anyway, for this morning we have French toast, bacon and cream soup. Jude responded without even looking at Cordelia, but she was already satisfied. It was because Jude's gaze was focused on the frying pan. Where did you learn how to cook? Here and there. Where is that here and there? France, Italy, England, China, the Czech Republic, Russia, Afghanistan, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, it's literally so on and so forth. Cordelia's eyes sparkled at Jude's words, but she pouted by the end of it. At first, it was possible if he had gone to 1 or 2 countries, but she didn't think that he'd really been to all those countries. Well, he's good at lying. But the important thing was that he was good at cooking, so Cordelia quickly regained her usual expression and used her nose to sniff again the smell of the savory bacon. Did you learn how to make bacon abroad? Oh, I learned this from my friend who lives in America. I heard that cooking is a skill. No, it's more about accurate measurement. Measurement. Baking time varies depending on the intensity of the fire. The amount of salt added depends on the amount of ingredients. Of course, it also depends on the person's preferences. Is it molecular gastronomy or something? Well, it's similar. Jude, who had spoken so far, suddenly raised his head to look at Cordelia and then shook his head in resignation. What is it? No, I just remembered the first dish you cooked 3 days ago. No, can you even call that cooking? Cordelia's face turned red in proportion to Jude's miserable face, and she pouted her lips. HMPH, I have a dish that I'm good at cooking too, okay? Lying about your weakness. No, it's not. I'm really good at cooking ramyun. Isn't ramyun an instant food? As Jude's expression became even more miserable, Cordelia's face turned even more red. Really, it's because you haven't tried it. If you eat the ramyun I cooked, you'll fall in love too. If you ask for it, I'll cook it for you every day. Yes, if you insist, so be it. Tusk, I'm serious. Cordelia pouted again, but she soon smiled and said, well, someone said that there's a right talent for the right place, so in the future, it'll be good to divide our tasks like this. You're the cook, and I'm the taster. Seeking bullshit. I'm in charge of cooking and you're in charge of washing dishes. Hey, he said that if his gyumjulmeek is cured, he wouldn't even let a drop of water get into my hands. When did I say that? He said that he'll carry you, hit you, cross over the wall and also care for you. I think something is missing. Anyway, we're going to eat now, so go and wash your face. Wash your hands too. Yes, Mom. Phooey, is that whom I'm going to marry? Cordelia stood up as she giggled, and Jude shook his head. I'll be right back. Yes, don't skip or you'll trip. Who do you think is a kid? After Cordelia arranged her long hair into a bun and secured it with a binieo made by Jude, she began walking with a light gait. She walked towards a nearby stream. It's definitely winter now, so it's really cold. Moreover, they had arrived near the northernmost part of the Len Kingdom. If the weather got a bit colder, the stream itself might freeze. I'm not sure if we'll be okay then. Frost Anvil would be much colder than this place. Although they diligently packed items that protected them against the cold, Jude still couldn't help worrying about it. It's a shame. If we had a little more time, we would have gotten the winter blessing. It was a blessing that could only be obtained through a special event called Winter Blessing. It helped by maintaining one's body temperature and not hindering one's movement in the cold. The problem, however, was that the event was a random occurrence. If you consider the circumstances, it seems to be near here. Jude raised his head and looked around, but he didn't see the area where he thought it would happen. No matter how great Jude Wiki was, he couldn't figure out the parts that were left out in the game. Damn, it can't be helped. The encounter with the person who told the event location was really random. Even if they had enough time, they still didn't know where it was, so they couldn't wander around here just to get the winter blessing. And it was at that moment. Kaya. Cordelia. Jude heard the screaming sound and spontaneously shouted as he stood up by kicking the ground and simultaneously using the 24 gale steps. Although it was a footwork technique, the 24 gale steps could be used as Kingong depending on its application. Cordelia. If she had been attacked, his current shout would be able to draw the enemy's attention away. Jude shouted loudly once again as he ran like a gale towards the stream. And when he reached the stream, hello. Cordelia uttered as she stood by the stream with an awkward face, and Jude looked past Cordelia and saw a large man who had fallen down with his head in the stream. What happened here? No, it was a reflex. Cordelia made some small gestures, narrating how she was so surprised that she instinctively used attack magic. Just like me, you're not normal either. She was an incomparably beautiful girl who would shoot attack magic by reflex. No, I mean, he suddenly came out from the bush, so I was really surprised. Well, that's okay, this is better than if you got hurt. In the midst of Cordelia's embarrassment, Jude pulled the man who had fallen in the stream and laid him down right away. Is he okay? I didn't use a strong magic. It was just paralyzed greater than. Fortunately, it's not fire arrow. Jude tactfully answered as he checked the man's pulse and breathing. As Cordelia had said, he was simply paralyzed, but because his magic resistance was low, her magic seriously affected him. What do you think? Did he get hurt when he fell? He's all right, your luck is good. Huh? Yes, I'm talking about you. Jude spoke as he glanced at Cordelia, who tilted her head. Look closely, you recognize him, right? It was the face of a man in his late 20s. He had a face that had no special features other than being plain-looking, but Cordelia immediately recognized him. The lumberjack Bambino. Yes, he's exactly the person we need. Bambino was both a lumberjack and an herbalist. There was no lord who claimed ownership of the forest in the northernmost part of the Len kingdom, and because of that, whoever took the wood or herbs was the rightful owner. Of course, it was a dangerous place where not only beasts, but also monsters, would occasionally appear as no one managed this place. One day, while Bambino was walking around and working hard in the forest mountain, he experienced something dreamy and fantastic. He witnessed the scene of a gathering of angels taking a bath. Angel? Bambino opened his eyes and blankly stared at Cordelia as he spoke. Jude frowned and Cordelia laughed like an idiot as she held out her hand and said in a whisper to Jude, I won right, isn't Cordelia the prettiest? Damn. After handing over the copper coin without any complaints, Jude spoke to Bambino, who was still in a daze. We are not angels, but scholars who came from the center to explore Frost Anvil. Are you guys the scholars? Yes, although we're still students, we belong to the Royal Academy. When Jude assumed an identity as a disguise without faltering in his acting, Cordelia stealthily turned away and concealed her facial expression. Unlike Jude, Cordelia was not good at lying. In any case, Bambino nodded at Jude's words. He thought that Jude and Cordelia did not appear to be common people. They must be real nobles. This was the Len kingdom, where there was no deep conflict between the nobility and the common people, but even though they were not nobles with a title, nobility was still nobility. Bambino's attitude became a little more careful. You don't have to be so nervous. What's your name? I'm Shoot and she's Felicia. Ooh, I'm Bambino. I see you're Mr. Bambino. Nice to meet you. What happened? I don't remember. Miss Felicia found you lying in the woods here. We don't want to sound boastful, but Miss Felicia did save Mr. Bambino's life. Thank you very much. No, ho, I'm glad that you're okay. Cordelia awkwardly answered and quickly averted her gaze again. She was feeling embarrassed. How can he be so brazen? While Cordelia had the same questions in her mind as always, Jude continued to speak. By the way, are you Mr. Bambino, who lives in Hobbs Village down here? Yes, I am that Bambino. Oh, I must be really lucky. As a matter of fact, I wanted to meet Mr. Bambino. May? Yes, they said that you saw the angels appearing here. Yes, no one believed me, but I really did see it. The sight of the little angels gathering and taking a bath. Bambino's words were true. While he was walking through the forest mountain as usual, he witnessed the scene of angels gathering and bathing. Bambino was fascinated by the fantastic and beautiful sight, so he visited the same place several times, but it was all in vain every time. Can you tell where that place is? But I've been there a few times, but nothing happened. It's all right, there might be some traces left. Of course, I'm going to give you some compensation. Bambino's face glowed when Jude smiled and lightly tapped a pouch full of silver coins. Please, Mr. Bambino. Follow me, it's not that far from here. Bambino unhesitatingly answered and began to take the lead, while Jude sent Cordelia a wink. The place Bambino guided them was a valley located at the foot of the mountain. Looking at the half-frozen valley water, it was a place where one would freeze to death if they took a bath. Here it is. I see, thank you. If something comes out of our investigation, I'll also inform Mr. Bambino, We have to go through the Hobbes village anyway. I'd really appreciate it if you did, because no one believed what I said. Ha, now, here's your compensation. Moderately cutting off Bambino's words, Jude sent Bambino away after paying him 2 silver coins. And a few seconds later, when only the two were left, Cordelia said in a firm tone, "I will absolutely not take a bath." "You don't have to, you know this event too." What Bambino saw was not the angels. What he saw was the forest fairies. Winter fairies. Yes, they're fairies after all. The two had bitter smiles as they unpacked their luggage near the valley and set up their camp. And that night, under the shining night sky, where so many stars shined brightly. "You're completely handsome, do you want to play with us?" "She's very pretty too." It was the reason why Bambino couldn't see the winter fairies, even though he had visited this place many times. And it was also the reason why Jude and Cordelia could meet them in a day. Indeed, it was the fairies. Yes, it's the fairies. In front of the absolutely handsome boy and incomparably beautiful girl who exchanged glances, the white-haired winter fairies gathered in groups of 2s and 3s. Chapter 42, Honeymoon 3. Some changes I made to the previous chapters. Terms used in this chapter. Minignon, Korean word that refers to an old man, 60yo and above, with a beautiful face looks. Mainly refers to men, but sometimes used on women too. It's thrilling, it's always fresh, and being handsome is the best. This is a famous quote answer from Korean actor Jung Woo-sung when he was asked in an interview if he ever gets tired from being called handsome. I only found out about it when I was translating this chapter. Most of the playable characters in Legend of Heroes 2 were composed of handsome men and beautiful women. Even Keynes, the only elderly character, was a very dignified, charming, and beautiful old man, Minignon. It sounds like a curse, Minignon. Tien, the Korean word for beautiful old man, which is read as Minonyon. Its pronunciation is similar to the curse word, read as Michin-nyon, which means crazy *tch. Among these playable characters, there were the 4 great kings of beauty, which included the absolutely handsome boy, Jude, and the incomparably beautiful girl, Cordelia. There was also the main character, Maximilian, who was not only born with a beautiful face, but also with character, ability, talent, connections, and a golden spoon. And lastly was the transcendental beauty, Adelaide, who always wore a mask because it was impossible to embody her exceeding beauty with an illustration. Lucas sort of feels like the minimum standard to enter that beautiful people category. It could also be said that Lucas is the lower limit if one wanted to be invited by the fairies. Although he was a manly, handsome, and attractive-looking man, he slightly didn't conform to the fairies' preferences. Now then, 2 of the 4 great kings of beauty, whom the fairies couldn't stop loving, were gathered here together, so it was natural that an enthusiastic response erupted among the fairies. "He's completely handsome. I don't think I'll get tired of looking at you all day. So pretty, her eyes are like jewels." The breaths of the winter fairies surrounding Jude and Cordelia grew restless as they continued expressing their thoughts. Unlike the fairies that Jude and Cordelia met before, who played with them like they were dolls, the winter fairies seemed to have more interest in appreciating beauty. "This is seriously embarrassing." Cordelia had lived her life being poured out words, saying that she was the prettiest, but now that she was surrounded by dozens of fairies pouring out compliments, it seemed that her growing embarrassment could even pierce the sky. "Look at how shy she is. Cute. I want to bite her." Cordelia became more embarrassed from the admiration of the winter fairies, and she could only look at the ground while at her wits' end. But Jude was completely different. "It's thrilling, it's always fresh, and being handsome is the best." "Kaya. Tell me this too. Not theirs but mine, raid mine." The winter fairies were jumping around and waving large pieces of paper in their hands, which were the size of a business card for humans. Each piece of paper was filled with lines that were cheesy and sweet, and the space and time seemed to shrink the moment the fairies heard Jude say the lines. "Now wait in line up. Okay, let's read this one this time." Jude answered leisurely and chose a piece of paper, and the fairies wildly screamed again. "Kaya, that's it. He read that famous line perfectly. What the hell is he doing? As Cordelia turned her head in curiosity, Jude saw Cordelia, and at that moment he wickedly smiled. No, he handsomely smiled. Cordelia, help me. Huh? What do you want? No, what do you want me to do here? Because I need someone who will play the opposite role. Someone who will play the opposite role. Just stand still. After their almost telepathic conversation, Jude approached Cordelia, who flinched for a moment and froze. And at the same time, dozens of winter fairies shut their mouths. It was to immerse themselves on what was about to happen. Stay still. Jude spoke with his eyes again as he slowly stretched out his hand and gently stroked Cordelia's beautiful hair. He then brought his face closer to her. What is this crazy B** star doing? But Jude didn't stop. He drew his face closer to a distance she could feel his breath, and while looking straight at Cordelia's blue eyes, he said, I can't do that because I... What are you? It's you. Jude's eyes moistened, and Cordelia unconsciously gulped. And so did the winter fairies. Jude caressed Cordelia's cheek. He spoke as if whispering, and had a face that seemed to shed tears at any moment. Because I love you. Kaya. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. The winter fairies wildly screamed and lost their minds. It was a scene in the story Romance of the Fairy Queen and the Ninth Circle Archmage. The Fairy Queen had destroyed the lifelong wish of the Archmage because of a decisive mistake, so she asked him to kill her. But the Archmage wailed, saying and begging that he couldn't kill her because of love. And what Jude acted out were the lines that the Archmage had said to the Fairy Queen. Did you record it? Did you record it? I even took a video. As the winter fairies went into a frenzy, Cordelia kicked Jude in the shin once. What is this crazy B** star doing? My heart was pounding, no, not that. Cordelia kicked Jude a few more times to suppress her embarrassment, and then took a deep breath. And the winter fairies worked hard to take another video, saying that it was good in its own way. Seriously, was he an actor? The way he expressed emotions through his eyes was not normal. When she thought about it, his acting intonation when he read the lines presented by the fairies were a little different each time. What did you really do? As Cordelia was absorbed in questioning Jude's real job, the winter fairies who were begging them to read their lines again suddenly shut their mouths and fell silent. It wasn't because Jude's new performance began. Open the way. Unlike the other fairies in mini dresses that were close to one-piece swimsuits, one fairy who was wearing armor and a helmet shouted loudly, and the entire banquet hall became silent at once, as if the fuss so far had been a lie. Fairy Night. It was the strongest fairy that protected the Fairy Queen. It was the only combat force that existed among the fairies who rarely went into battle. Jude Baer and Cordelia Chase, the Queen is calling for the two of you. At the Fairy Knight's declaration, most of the fairies' faces and shoulders drooped. It was a declaration that the banquet was virtually over. Follow me. As the Fairy Knight spoke with dignity and turned around, the winter fairies stepped aside and opened the way for Jude and Cordelia. It was fun. Thank you. Let's play again later. Jude responded with a smile to the fairies, who only said a few words and sent Cordelia a look. The real thing starts from now on. The only one who could give the winter protection was the Fairy Queen, the head of the winter fairies. However, Jude and Cordelia were aiming for more than that. This way. As they walked following the guidance of the Fairy Knight, the trees lined up in a narrow line, creating a corridor-like space. It was almost the same structure as the home of the fairies, whom they had previously visited. And after a few steps, the same thing happened again this time. Their vision seemed to blur for a moment, and suddenly, Jude and Cordelia had arrived at the Queen's room. I greet the Fairy Queen. I greet the Fairy Queen. When Jude bowed while greeting her, Cordelia quickly followed suit and bowed while greeting her too. You are polite children. On top of the icy throne sat the Fairy Queen in a white dress with a bluish glow. If the Fairy Queen they met before had blonde hair, the Fairy Queen now had platinum hair close to silver. She also gave off a much colder impression, perhaps because of the color of her dress. But still, the Fairy Queen is a fairy. Jude took a deep breath and straightened his posture, before looking straight at the Fairy Queen. You are handsome indeed. The Fairy Queen showed a fairy-like reaction with a slight blush on her cheeks as she smiled. She turned to Cordelia for a moment, before returning her gaze to Jude. She had seen the silver ring on the ring finger of Jude's right hand, which Jude had deliberately lifted towards his chest. The fairy steps. As expected, she recognized it. Or more like, she had no choice but to recognize it. The fairy steps was uncommon. Moreover, the fairy steps that Jude was wearing now belonged to the 4 fairies. Fairies have classifications too. Spring, summer, fall, and winter. The fairies symbolized the 4 seasons. Broadly speaking, they were all the same fairies, but there were some differences, just like how humans classified each other by race and country. The fairies that Jude and Cordelia met before were fall fairies, and the winter fairies, or to be more exact, the Winter Fairy Queen, held their existence to be of a considerable significance. Did Lorelei give you this? The Fall Fairy Queen had said that she liked a handsome man more than a pretty woman. Yes, she gave this to thank us for participating well in the banquet. He had received it as a reward for defeating the Bighorn, but Jude deliberately hid that fact. Because we didn't do anything special here, except for playing. Of course, they didn't forget to mention the moonlight either. This sacred rod was also given by Lorelei. When Jude softly spoke and gestured to Cordelia, she quickly lifted the moonlight that she had taken out beforehand. Moonlight. She definitely said that it was her hospitality for the guests, and we thought that it was too much of an item to give, but nonetheless, we were grateful. When Gerd, the Winter Fairy Queen, heard Jude's answer, her expression became complicated. She thought that she should at least do what Lorelei did. Otherwise, she felt like she had somehow lost to Lorelei. A fairy is a fairy after all. They were a race that were written as cute, lovely, and mischievous, and can be easily read like a child. The Fairy Queen Gerd groaned for a moment, before clenching her fists as if she had reached a decision. The winter fairies cannot fall behind the fall fairies. You're absolutely right. Seeing it in person like this really no. It wouldn't be polite to Lorelei or to Gerd either. Gerd's blue eyes were filled with various emotions when Jude purposely spoke. What's wrong? What were you trying to say? That is. Because you look to be more beautiful than Lorelei, I'm sure that your heart is more beautiful too. At Jude's blatant lines, Cordelia quickly lowered her head to conceal her expression. Why is he not embarrassed? I mean, his hidden intentions are just too visible. But Jude's words were effective. The Fairy Queen was also a fairy after all. His straightforward compliments made her cheeks blush slightly, and then she smiled. That's right, isn't it? I'm a bit prettier than my sister Lorelei, right? Heh. Gerd's hands fluttered in her happiness, but she soon straightened her face and cleared her throat as she said, Ahem, I have seen you please my children, so I will give you a reward like Lorelei. Thank you very much. Thank you. Jude and Cordelia quickly expressed their gratitude at her courtesy, and the pleased Gerd clapped her hands. Bring the fairies' bonds. At that moment, Jude and Cordelia looked at each other, and the two had the same thoughts. Bingo. For real. They both exclaimed. The fairies' bonds was a valuable item. It wasn't an item on the level of an S-rank item, and it was unlike the fairy steps which had a direct effect on its user. However, if one considered its prospects, it was actually one of the end-stage top 3 items that could be obtained from the fairies. It's a bracelet that can hold the protections of the fairies from the 4 seasons. Originally, the protection given by the fairies did not last for a long time. It was like a disposable sticker tattoo. However, the situation changed if the protection was placed on the fairies' bonds. Not only has the effect of the protection become much stronger, but the duration and number of times that it can be used have also significantly increased. But the real deal is once you've collected all the protections. By obtaining all the protections of the fairies from the 4 seasons, a special protection called the Great Protection of the 4 Seasons could be activated, And if one combined all the protections of the fairies from the 4 seasons into one protection, the Fairy King's protection, one of the strongest protections of heroes too, would be created. It's a total scam if you collect everything. The effect of just the great protection of the 4 seasons was so powerful. Those who received the great protection of the 4 seasons could not only freely use the power of the fairies of the 4 seasons, but were also recognized by the world as one of the fairies, and enjoyed various privileges. It's a bit of a problem that it's just a silver bracelet if it doesn't have any protections, so I guess we'll just have to collect it all. Rather, the question was whether it was Jude or Cordelia who would get the fairies' bonds. It was a very useful item for either of them. But fortunately, Gerd eliminated those concerns. The two of you get along well with each other like a couple, so it would be nice if you wore something together. What she revealed then was a couple bracelet. Looking down at the pair of beautifully crafted silver bracelets, Jude and Cordelia brightly smiled, as if a flower bloomed on their faces. Because their happiness was truly pure. At the sight of the two, Gerd proudly raised her chin and carefully asked, as if she was talking to herself. Lorelei can't keep up with me, right? Of course. We really appreciate it. At that moment, Jude and Cordelia resumed their pretensions and answered. Gerd then said, after feeling better, I'm going to give you the winter protection, so hold out your arm with the bracelet. Jude and Cordelia immediately followed her instruction. The winter protection granted by the Winter Fairy Queen. Thanks to the protection being incorporated into the fairies' bonds, the two had felt that they had gained a resistance to the cold. Well then, tell us more of your stories. How did you come all the way here to this distant place? Just like the Fall Fairy Queen, the Winter Fairy Queen was also strongly curious about the outsiders. Jude replied that they were on the way to Frost Anvil because of the sunflower. I hope that you find the sunflower, so that you can carry your fiancé, be hit by her. Wait. What did you say? Cross over the wall. Yes, that's it. Cheer up, pretty child. Your beloved will definitely get the sunflower and then take care of you. Yes, I look forward to it. Ho ho. Cordelia was skeptical about Jude's statement, but she still answered with a smile to the Fairy Queen. That's it. If you're going to Frost Anvil, I think I can give you a little more help. Gerd nodded her head once as if she had made up her mind, and then said to the Fairy Knight, who was also listening to their conversation. Ada, go and bring the fairy feathers. Yes, Your Majesty. As the Fairy Knight politely bowed and left, Gerd looked back at Jude and Cordelia and said, Do you know about the fairy feathers? Yes, of course I do. However, unlike his innermost thoughts, Jude showed an ignorant expression, so Gerd explained with a smile. The fairy feathers are a mysterious item that allows you to traverse space. It'll let you get to Frost Anvil at once. Wow, really? Gerd nodded as Cordelia chipped in their conversation. It's true, the ancient dwarves who built Frost Anvil, and us, winter fairies, were once very close. The ancient dwarves gave us the magic coordinates so that we could get into Frost Anvil at once to play with them anytime. In fact, the ancient dwarves gave it to control the fairies whom they didn't know when and where the fairies would suddenly pop out, because it was the easiest way to satisfy both the dwarves, who were annoyed at the fairies suddenly appearing, and the fairies, who wanted to just play. Jude decided to keep that truth in his mind, rather than uselessly pointing it out to the fairies. However, there was a problem. Your Majesty, there is only one feather left. At the Fairy Knight's words, Gerd slightly frowned. The feathers of the fairy feathers were one-use items, and only one person could use one feather. Well, it should still be okay, just use that trick. That trick? Cordelia curiously asked. One feather per person was needed, so she wondered what trick the Fairy Queen was talking about. It's simple, the two of you should tightly hug each other and then use it. Then the two of you will be able to move together. Gerd smiled as she thought that it was a really easy solution. Cordelia turned to Jude and he said, Well, it can't be helped. Why do you have a wicked smile then? No, it's not. I wanted to use one feather per person too, okay? As he whispered in a small voice, Gerda happily looked at them before turning to the fairy knight and saying, "Tell the children to gather, we'll be sending off our guests." "Yes, your majesty." Shortly after the fairy knight answered, the space seemed to fluctuate, and Jude and Cordelia suddenly found themselves standing in the center of the banquet hall, surrounded by dozens of fairies. "Hugs, hug. Free hugs. Bear hug. Who's that crazy kid saying hug, hug? It should be love hug." The winter fairies chatted among themselves, and some even resolutely lifted their video recording equipment. Gerda then said with a smile, "Human children, I wish that you'll get what you want from Frost Anvil. Be happy." "Happy? It's live well. What does a teleport to Frost Anvil have to do with being happy?" Cordelia's face turned miserable in the midst of the continuous support from the winter fairies, and she said to Jude, "Let's go quickly." "Okay." Jude was starting to feel embarrassed too. "It's me or you?" "Me." Cordelia immediately understood what he meant. She took a deep breath before crossing her arms in an X shape in front of her chest and standing straight. Afterwards, Jude very awkwardly hugged Cordelia. "Wow, kiss, kiss, kiss." He couldn't bear it any longer. Jude urgently activated the fairy feather, and the two crossed through the space. Frost Anvil was one of the 7 cities of the Great Kingdom, founded by the ancient dwarves. Gasbiharha. Who's who? The two safely arrived inside a dim room, and they spent some time roughly breathing before raising their heads and looking at each other. Fairies. After the fallen two sighed and then took a deep breath, they quickly began moving. Cordelia lit up the darkness with a magic light, and Jude took out the Frost Anvil map he had drawn in advance. Frost Anvil. It looks like we're inside. Cordelia, can you shine the light over there? Here. Yes, there. When she shone the light to the spot indicated by Jude, there were some large characters inscribed on the wall. It's the ancient dwarf text. Jujigli translator, what does it say? Jujigli translator. Do you prefer the Gouda translator? TN if you don't get it. Jude combined with Google will result in either Jujigli or Gouda. Jujigli is better. Anyway, just wait. Let me search my memories first. You sound like a pervert when you say grope. Let me check my memories then. TN, it's a pun. Deodomta can both mean to search and to grope. When Cordelia pointed it out, Jude used another word for search, which is salpud boda, meaning to search or to check. Jude quickly corrected his words and closed his eyes as he opened his memory palace. Even if Jude's memory was superior, it was impossible for him to remember everything right away. After a few minutes, Jude interpreted the ancient dwarf text based on his memories. Frost Anvil, first floor lobby. Oh, we're really inside. I think it's the room right next to the entrance. What a huge relief, because it's not easy to pass through the entrance. Frost Anvil was an underground city built by the ancient dwarves. There was only one entrance called the Great Gate. The entrance itself was large and solid, but it was not an easy place to pass through because various monsters gathered near it. It's good to be lucky. Thanks to the winter fairies, they easily broke through one of the obstacles to this place. It's cold even though the winter protection is activated. Because this place is completely no different from a freezer, zip up your collar and let's start right away. We'll take a break once we've moved to the lounge on the first floor. The full-scale exploration activities started from the underground's second floor onwards, which were infested with monsters, traps, and so on. Cordelia nodded at Jude's suggestion and increased the brightness of the magic light a little. The two then began walking together. And at that same time, in a completely different place, the executives of the Devil's Hand gathered together. Chapter 43, Episode 43, Frost Anvil 1. Episode 43, Frost Anvil 1. There were numerous demon followers in Pleiades. Their history began with the descent of the two great monarchs of Hell. More than 1,000 years have passed, but even now they persistently continue to exist. The demon followers are not just one group. Contrary to public perception, they were not all on the same side. Because the great monarchs they served were different. The demon followers antagonized and competed with each other, as the great monarchs of hell did, and in severe cases, they did not hesitate to shed blood in their clashes. The Devil's Hand is a group who served Asmodeus of Lust, one of the 5 great monarchs of hell. Their ultimate goal is to have Asmodeus descend and take over the world through the realization of her hell, Sabbath, on the real world. The sacrifice had left the eagle's nest. At the headquarters of the Devil's Hand, located at the center of the Len Kingdom, the key executives of the Devil's Hand were all gathered in one place. One was physically present, while others used phantoms that appeared through magic. The eyes of the key executives who stood in each corner of a hexagonal star were all focused on the black-haired woman, demonic human Saluzia, who was in charge of the northern part of the Len Kingdom. The sacrifice left the eagle's nest. Cordelia Chase had escaped from Count H.R. Svelga's protection. How did that happen? It was a woman's low voice that made the listeners feel at ease. She was the leader of the Devil's Hand, and at her question, Saluzia explained the details of the situation. Cordelia Chase went on a honeymoon trip with her fiancé, Jude Bayer. Even though they were ambushed twice. When demonic human Koros, who stood on one corner of the hexagonal star, asked with a wry smile because he found it absurd, the other executives somehow also had the same facial expressions, as they too found it to be incomprehensible. The first and second attack pretty much stated that the goal of the Devil's Hand was Cordelia and Lucas. However, there was still more to be dumbfounded about. Furthermore, the two had escaped to go on a journey. Count H.R. Svelga have currently dispatched people everywhere to find the couple. Crazy. The other executives also nodded at Koros' sentiments. Then, Koros added a few more words to try to lighten up the conversation. Are you saying that they're teenagers who have nothing in their brains because they are so blinded by love? For now, I think so. Saluzia answered with a little difficulty, before looking back at their leader again and continuing her explanation. Cordelia Chase's destination is presumed to be Frost Anvil. On what grounds? The very purpose of Cordelia Chase's visit to Count H.R. Svelga in the first place was to acquire the legendary sunflower that blooms in Frost Anvil. That flower is a special medicine which would heal the chronic disease of her fiancé, Jude Bayer. They went on a trip looking for a drug to cure her fiancé's illness. I see, so that's what they were thinking when they left. When Koros spoke quietly again, Saluzia frowned but did not deny his words. Saluzia had thought the same too. But there were 2 reasons why Saluzia frowned. One was the fact that Koros jumped in her conversation with their beloved leader. The other was the fact that they had already lost 3 demonic humans and more than 100 combatants because of those immature and empty-headed teenagers. Saluzia was the one who had planned both operations, so if she looked at it from a broader perspective, she had failed twice because of those immature teenagers. This is no laughing matter. We've already lost 3 demonic humans because of those children. Minos, Varus, and the Northern Viscount were all low-ranking demonic humans, but even so, they were still demonic humans. They had to invest a considerable amount of time, effort, and assets to create them. Moreover, the loss of the Northern Viscount was more painful than the previous 2. Before he was a demonic human, he was a nobleman who officially had a manor in the kingdom. If not for that Iron Man, we wouldn't have lost those demonic humans. The 2 were just merely lucky. The Iron Man he was referring to was Landius. Koros grumbled a bit as he spoke, and their leader had a gentle smile. You're right, certainly, if that Iron Man hadn't intervened, Saluzia's second operation would not have failed, but don't forget the fact that those children defeated Minos too. Furthermore, it wasn't just that. Although they were helped by the witch's soul, the demonic monster of Asmodeus, who was asleep in the Trafalgar Forest, also died at the hands of those children. They weren't children that could be easily dealt with. Saluzia, do you have any other reasons on why you think they're going there? Yes, I have. We've looked at civilians on the route from Vedafalnia to Frost Anvil, and we've found a small number of people who saw what is believed to be Cordelia Chase and Jude Bayer. And Carno's foresight also pointed to Frost Anvil. Carno's was one of the few demonic humans with the power of foresight, and was in fact appointed as the successor to Saluzia. The disadvantage of Carno's foresight is that you can't get it whenever you want, but it is accurate once it appears. As if to help Saluzia, one of the executives spoke in a small voice. It was Nemia, a demonic human active in the Argon Empire. The leader of the Devil's Hand, who had long blue hair, closed her eyes once. She was silent for a moment as she organized her thoughts, before she opened her eyes and said, "Saluzia." "Yes, ma'am." "What's your plan?" "Considering their speed of movement so far, it will take 2 more days for Cordelia Chase to arrive at Frost Anvil. So before that, I plan to deploy troops at the Great Gate, the only entrance to Frost Anvil, to capture the two." It wasn't a bad plan. Moreover, the Iron Man Landius had already left Count H.R. Svelga's territory and was heading towards the capital. There would no longer be any unexpected intrusions. "Saluzia, I will trust you once again." "Thank you, I will surely live up to your expectations." Saluzia replied, bowing her head deeply when their leader gave her permission. Koro scornfully laughed at her voice mixed with tears, but in fact, all the executives, including him, were deeply fascinated with their leader. If he were in the same situation, Koro's would have reacted similarly. Now that the conversation is roughly over, let's wrap up today's meeting. May Asmodeus' favor be with everyone. May her favor be with you. As their leader spoke, the executives spoke in one voice. And after a few seconds, the other executives and everything else disappeared. Saluzia slowly drew her breath and opened her eyes. In front of her was a large podium instead of a hexagonal star, and her subordinates waiting for her return. "Master Saluzia." Saluzia slowly nodded at the call of Carnos, a demonic human who was so tall that he was nearly 2 meters in height. "Our head gave us her permission, but this is our last chance. We have to mobilize all our strength to secure Cordelia Chase." Cordelia Chase was clearly a valuable sacrifice to summon a high-ranking demon. But now, it wasn't just a simple matter of securing the sacrifice. In order to keep their leader's trust and maintain her status among the executives, Cordelia must be captured. Demonic humans Farragut and Vilke, and the demon Sisyth have already reached the vicinity of Frost Anvil. They're probably building a strongpoint in front of the Great Gate by now. They needed to secure the Great Gate before Cordelia Chase arrives, so they had already finished preparation to some extent. "We must succeed this time." "We will definitely succeed. The only entrance to Frost Anvil is through the Great Gate. Moreover, 2 demonic humans and even a demon have been mobilized this time, so it's hopeless for them unless the Iron Man appears again." Saluzia agreed with him. What else could they do if they were ambushed at the only entrance? Would they be teleporting to get inside Frost Anvil then? That's ridiculous. The ancient Dwarven kingdom collapsed more than 1,000 years ago. Who in this world would have the teleport coordinates that lead to such ancient ruins? Moreover, teleport magic wasn't a magic that could be used easily. Unless they were the legendary fairies who could freely travel through time and space, it was not possible. "Carry out the plan. May Asmodeus' favor be with you." "May her favor be with you." Carnos replied with a smile, and Saluzia had a small smile too. Meanwhile, at the corridor of Frost Anvil's first floor, Jude suddenly said as he looked at the Great Gate, or more specifically, the inside part of the Great Gate. "As you know, the monsters will come flocking here." "Is it because of the sunflower?" "Yes, because the blooming period of the sunflower is imminent. Most of the monsters in the vicinity must have already gathered near Frost Anvil." The sunflower gave off a unique scent. It was impossible to properly smell it with a human's sense of smell, but it was not the same for monsters. In addition, the unique scent of the sunflower had the power to attract monsters. As the blooming period approached, the scent became thicker, so in the next few days, countless monsters would rush into Frost Anvil. The best thing to do is to leave some troops at the Great Gate and defend. But that's impossible because there's only the 2 of us here. That's right, so there's only way left. They would take advantage of the fact that Frost Anvil was constructed with only a single passage leading to a certain floor. If we lay down a bunch of traps on that passage, they'll die along the way. It was a simple but clear answer. Jude had been drawing magic circles throughout their journey in preparation for today. We shouldn't be disturbed during the time when we harvest the sunflower, so don't spare on the magic circles. Let's completely spread it out. You do know that I'm the one who puts mana in the magic circles, right? I know, ma'am, so I prepared a lot of mana potions. I hate you. Jude and Cordelia chatted as usual as they set up magic circles on almost the entire first floor passage. Afterwards, they took a break on the lounge in the first floor. From this point on, the outline of our plan is simple. All we have to do is go down to the 7th basement floor where the sunflower will bloom. Do we drop by the armory on the way? Yes. Their progression was a little different from the original story. They would go down to the 7th underground floor to get the sunflower like the original story, but because of the powerful boss monster that could be encountered on the 7th floor, their plan was to go to the 7th floor only after securing a weapon in the armory to defeat the boss monster. We already know what will happen, so we don't need to walk back and forth. First, they would stop by the armory and secure the power weapons that were the legacy of the ancient dwarves. I'm looking forward to the power weapons. In the original story, we could only take the one we needed. But this was reality now. They would certainly be able to pick out and take several items that could be of use to them now. New equipment is always welcome. It's the virtue of RPG to go shopping first when you enter a new town. Oh, you understand that much. It's one of the pleasures of RPG after all. Yes, Mom is right. Yes, so listen well to what Mom has to say. The two bantered as always while they securely packed their bags before they finally looked at each other. Let's go. The two spoke together as they began walking forward alongside each other. And at the same time again in front of the great gate, Frost Anvil's entrance. Don't even let a rat pass. Under the command of Farragut, a demonic human with an unusually huge right arm, the combatants of the Devil's Hand quickly moved and began setting up traps all over the great gate. Demonic human Vilke, a witch of detection, stared at the south with narrowed eyes. The demon Sisyth, whose whole body was entangled with a seal, creepily laughed. Capture Cordelia Chase and Jude Bear at the great gate. Saluzia will be pleased, and this time I will go beyond that bastard Carnos and gain Master Saluzia's favor. Farragut leaked out a low laugh as he stood in front of the great gate's firm door and looked south to where Cordelia and Jude would appear. But 3 days later, what appeared in front of demonic human Farragut were countless monsters, and not an incomparably beautiful girl and an absolutely handsome boy. Chapter 44, Episode 44, Frost Anvil 2. Terms used in this chapter. Silpi literally means loss of blood, but blood loss sounds better. It is a Korean gaming term which meant that the player character's HP is seriously low. Games that use HP bars for their characters, e.g. Pokémon, have HP bars that turn red in color when the HP is low, and HP is tied to the character's life, so red plus life equals blood. Baby Shark, a Korean children's song about a family of sharks that went viral worldwide. Its lyrics usually have do in the end. The flock is endless. Master Farragut. Ah, save me. The screams of the combatants were heard throughout the cold and harsh winds of Frost Anvil. Demonic human Farragut glared straight ahead as he roughly breathed. There was a red glare in his eyes as he had already activated his demonization, and Farragut saw the monsters hidden among the rushing snowstorm. Too many. There were hundreds to perhaps even thousands or more monsters. There were also various types. The monsters weren't just divided into several species. Among them was a type of monster that even Farragut had never seen before. Master Farragut. He heard a scream again that came from his back and not in the front. It was because the flying monsters known as winter harpies stormed through the back of Farragut's battle formation. Lowly monsters. Farragut yelled in anger and struck his right fist. A terrifying shock wave then rose and spread out, hitting the winter harpies. The strength of his attack's power made the blizzard and gale covering the whole area disappear for a moment. Bang! The winter harpies hit by the shockwaves became a handful of blood that scattered in the area, and some of the survivors ran away in horror. But it was only for a short time. Soon the blizzard struck again, and monsters came flocking too. Damn it! It wasn't like this from the beginning. At best, it started with a few snow goblins appearing, so it wasn't strange. Frost Anvil was a snowfield area, and snow goblins lived in snowfields. But as time went by, things got weird. The number of snow goblins kept increasing as if they were moving in groups, and later, winter bears, who were the snow goblins' predators, also appeared. Several hours have passed since then. Master Farragut, I can't hold on any longer. The combatant's heartbreaking scream proved to be true. However, it wasn't possible for them to leave this place. We can't get away. The monsters were too many. There was no way for them to escape, because the monsters endlessly came like turbulent sea waves. Master Farragut, Master Vilkay. Farragut turned his gaze as he smashed the head of a winter bear that came right behind his back. He could see Vilkay in the distance, surrounded by countless monsters, as she rose to the sky by spreading her wings. Her eyes glowed red and released a terrifying magic power. Boom! An intense red wave swept around Vilkay and the surrounding area. It instantly created a huge vacant lot that was 20 meters in diameter, with its inside filled with the blood of monsters. Dark. However, Vilkay did not come out unharmed. After using too much mana in succession, she collapsed on the floor and vomited dark red blood. Vilkay. Farragut roughly kicked on the ground. The monsters attacked Vilkay again, as if their sense of fear was paralyzed. Farragut. The horns protruding through Vilkay's red hair gradually became smaller. Her demonization was released because of excessive use. Awuo. In one fell swoop, Farragut struck with his huge fist the monsters rushing at Vilkay, before quickly holding her by the waist using his left arm. We have to get out. It was unreasonable to hold on to this position any longer. They had to escape somehow. Let's fully unseal Sisiath. Then, he'll run wild, but it'll buy us some time. It wasn't that the demons summoned by the devil's hand were perfectly manageable. Most of the time, they formed partnerships through contracts, but the other party was a demon after all. There were some demons who one-sidedly exploited the devil's hand too. Sisiath was a demon belonging to the latter. Therefore, their leader sealed some of Sisiath's power with the power she received from Asmodeus, making Sisiath a slave of the devil's hand. For now, we must live. If Sisiath goes mad, he'll kill us first. It was true. Farragut struck the ground with his fist, causing a shockwave again. He then saw the combatants desperately fighting in front of the Great Gate. They had brought close to 100 people, but only 30 people were left. We can't run out there. The monsters endlessly came in droves. If the number of monsters exceeded one's imagination, even Farragut would get swept away by the monster waves and be killed. Farragut knew of that fact too, so he said with a heavy breath, "Let's go inside. Inside the Great Gate. Go inside, seal the doors, and unseal Sisiath." The door? Vilkay asked in confusion. The Great Gate was tightly sealed. Count H.R. Svelga had newly installed a huge seal to prevent thieves from entering Frost Anvil. I will open it. If I use all my remaining power, it would be possible to break the seal and open the door. Go inside, close the doors, and unseal Sisiath. Let Sisiath deal with the monsters, while they rest inside to restore their strength. Removing the seal would make it conspicuous from afar, so Cordelia might feel that something is strange and not approach this place out of concern, but now wasn't the time for them to think about that. After we've recovered, we just need to seal Sisiath again. Even Sisiath would be exhausted from dealing with all those monsters. Okay, I agree to that. Vilkay nodded. Farragut took a deep breath and gathered all his remaining mana into one place, and he strongly kicked the ground again. I'll open the doors, evacuate inside. As he shouted loudly, he threw up Vilkay into the air towards the combatants. As soon as the combatants scurried and caught Vilkay, he pulled his fist and focused all his strength on one point. It was not a technique or skill, but just the manifestation of pure power. The moment he punched the doors, a red flash of light struck the Great Gate. The entire Great Gate, which stood at 20 meters high, shook greatly. Count H.R. Svelga's golden magic seal that was spread out on front of the Great Gate was shattered all at once. Yuzo! Farragut didn't stop. The great gate was slightly opened from the shock, so he inserted his hands on the gap and opened the doors with all his might. The great gate boasted an enormous weight as much as its size. Despite all his efforts, the gap he created was only enough to fit a couple of people. Hurry up! Farragut was the first to enter as he shouted, and the combatants followed behind Farragut, rushing inside the doors. Master Farragut. We too. Oh. The combatants, who stood at the very back of the formation and stopped the monsters, all cried out to Farragut, but he ignored them. About 10 combatants were dying in the struggle, while Farragut closed the great gate with all his might. Boom! With a dull sound, the doors were closed together, at the same time. Vilkay finished the ritual to release Sisith's seal. How is how? Farragut roughly breathed as he broke into a cold sweat. Beyond the doors, he could feel the powerful magic of Sisith that had been unsealed. Farragut. Vilkay was covered in sweat as she called Farragut. There was a mixture of terror and fear in both their eyes, and a sense of relief that they lived at the same time. Farragut spoke. Let's go inside. Inside. A little more inside. It's dangerous to be right in front of the doors. Since the seal was gone, anyone could open the doors as long as they have muscle strength. Whether it was the monsters or Sisith going crazy, it was equally dangerous. So they should go inside and hide themselves. Make a fire to drive away the cold, and eat anything to restore their stamina. You're right. Nodding her head, Vilkay ordered the combatants to move forward and then supported Farragut, who had sat down on the floor. Cordelia is probably dead already. Yes, they must have died. So many monsters flocked to this place. They would have probably been eaten by the monsters that flocked near Frost Anvil. I have no idea why this happened. The reason why the monsters suddenly gathered here. The sunflower was kind of a legend. Therefore, the fact that monsters flocked to the sunflower when it blooms was not widely known in the world. No one lived near Frost Anvil in the first place. Anyway, let's go. Yes, we have to recover our strength. Kill a few combatants and absorb their souls and vitality, and their strength will return to some extent. It was at that time when Farragut and Vilkay were having similar thoughts. At a certain point. Exactly when they entered a certain point in the corridor. Farragut felt something. Vilkay was the same. What is this? Right after the words came out, magic flames shot up from the ceiling, walls, and the floor. Hey, huh? Jude and Cordelia looked at each other. A ring of pure white light had suddenly surrounded each of them. Level up. Did the monsters get caught in the trap? Wow, is this the range of experience that we gained thus far? Aren't they almost close to the borderline? We're on the 3rd floor now. The magic circles that were installed in the corridor on the 1st floor were a joint work of Jude and Cordelia, so it was natural that they gained experience together. However, Cordelia tilted her head again as she wondered. By the way, isn't this indirect hunting very effective in gaining experience? Didn't they level up at once? Aren't they already level 20? Well, it's just a small profit compared to the number of magic circles we installed. Haven't the monsters triggered most of it already? It was at that moment when Jude had said those words. Hey. Once again, a ring of light surrounded the two. They leveled up again. Moreover, 3 rings have appeared in a row this time. At this point, Jude had no choice but to look confused. What happened? Maybe a big fish got caught. I made it myself, but I don't think the magic circles are enough to catch a big fish though. I don't know, maybe it's Silpy, and then they got hit by the magic circle and went "Awa." Awa refers to one's death cry. At Cordelia's assertion, Jude's eyes widely opened and then said as he clenched his fist. It's possible. That's my line. What are you saying? On another note, it's nice that we've leveled up. I've been running out of mana nowadays. The performance of witch transformation is dramatically improved the more mana one has. As a magic specialized character, Cordelia's mana grew greatly every time she leveled up, so this level up was like the long-awaited rain for a drought. Furthermore, the effect of level up did not simply stop there. The witch's spellbook had a structure in which the number of pages that could be opened were increased every time one reached a certain level, so if she increased by one more level now, Cordelia could open a new chapter. When Cordelia bubbled over with joy, Jude's expression naturally relaxed. He spoke in a serious tone again afterwards. I find it nice too, but we'd better hurry. The monsters have entered the first floor after all. Okay, let's hurry. After agreeing with Jude, Cordelia walked for a while before stopping again. I think I know the way from here. We can go that way, right? Oh, that's right. There is a secret passage over there that leads you to the 5th floor. Originally, they had to fight with various monsters that lived in Frost Anvil between the 3rd and 5th floors, but the two decided to skip them all for now. Because you can get a weapon that can help in defeating them. It would be a lot easier to defeat monsters after they've grabbed power weapons from the armory. It was not an option for the two who were rotten water to pass by without defeating the monsters, who were the treasure trove of experience points. Power weapon do tilde. It's so sweet tilde do tilde. In the anvil do tilde. Power weapon. What are you doing? What am I doing? It's a song of joy. In the original story, they got a power spear to defeat the giant white snake that guarded the sunflower, but this time, it would be different. She wondered what else is there. She thought about what she could bring. It's so sweet tilde do, power weapon. Cordelia took the lead as she hummed, and Jude thought as he unconsciously giggled and smiled. She's cute. She'll growl if he said it, so Jude kept his thoughts to himself. What are you doing? Come quickly. Yes, do power weapon. Do. Do. Okay, do. Good. Cordelia smiled in great satisfaction, and Jude grinned too as he began walking again. And 30 minutes later, the two arrived in front of the ancient dwarves' armory. Chapter 45, Episode 45, Armory. Terms used in this chapter. Gathering dirt to make a big mountain, a proverb expression which means that even very small things can become huge if they accumulate. An English equivalent would be, many a mickle makes a muckle. Eat it raw, eat something raw, an idiom which means to do or have something without making any effort. So if you see the word eat it raw later in this chapter, it refers to this idiom and not the literal meaning edit, and not the lewd one in English too, hahaha. The ancient dwarves were superior in many ways to the current dwarves, and the two had significant differences, especially in terms of physique. The ancient dwarves were quite tall. Rather than being tall, aren't they just bulky? Well, at any rate, they're grossly big. If the bulky adults of the current dwarves were about 130 to 140 centimeters tall, the ancient dwarves reached an average height of 170 centimeters. As Cordelia had said, rather than being tall, they are bulky. The body type of the ancient dwarves were the same as the current dwarves. They have short limbs, broad shoulders, and quite a large head. Their body type remains the same, but as their height grows, the other parts of their body also grow bigger. They have big hands, big feet, and a big head. Incidentally, all these facts were quite useful for Jude and Cordelia at the present moment. This is because the position of the panel that opens the door to the armory is just at a right height for human use. What is it? No, I just thought you're a little big. Big, do you mean my height? Is it because you're slowly being healed from Gyumjulmeek? Based on when they awaken their past lives as the starting point, Cordelia's height was about 165 cm, and Jude's height was around 166-170 cm. Therefore, their differences in height was not enough for her to look up to Jude, but now that they've stood parallel to each other, Cordelia had to raise her head quite a bit to make eye contact. Well, there are some cases where Gyumjulmeek hindered growth. In the first place, the character Jude will later grow to almost 180 cm, so I'll grow up too. 180. Cordelia took a step back as she evaluated Jude by looking at him up and down. Not bad. Thank you for your kind consideration, ma'am. Yes, Mom, anyway, just open the door. Isn't Dad better than Mom, though? You want to be called Dad, do you want me to call you Papa from now on then? Okay, Papa, your taste is unique. Just call me Mom. After they've exchanged a silly conversation, Jude brushed off the accumulated dust on the panel that was attached to the wall. It was a panel of numeric keys that was common everywhere, and the door was only opened after entering a 9-digit password. In the original story, they had to find the notebook of the forgetful manager, hidden somewhere on the 5th floor to find out the password, but this time they didn't have to. Open it quickly, quickly, do. Wait, let me search my memories. Cordelia pretended to listen as she hummed, while Jude checked his memory palace. A few minutes after, when the password was successfully entered, the seal of the armory's large steel door was released with a rattling sound. My heart is pounding. Me too, Jude replied to Cordelia, and then pushed the steel door that opened sideways to open the armory. It's the same as the original. Cordelia spoke small as her cheeks reddened, and she looked inside the armory while remembering how the armory in the original looked. It was a square room about 10 meters long on each side, but it was not like a frozen freezer compared to the other rooms in Frost Anvil, perhaps because it was sealed for a long time. The real deal is further inside, right? Yes, so let's take a look here before that. Cordelia quickly nodded as Jude pointed to the shelves on the wall. Right, I really wanted to take these whenever I played the game. Taking the other items was a pipe dream because they couldn't be acquired in the game, but now it was no longer a pipe dream anymore. Is this a basic armor set? Cordelia ran to the shelf and looked. She then found a set of gloves, shoes, a vest, and a round helmet that could all be equipped as a set. Sort of. After all, rather than completely being an armory, this is a storage room for equipment. Why do you say that? No, those are work clothes. Work clothes? Yes, because Frost Anvil was an underground city, and it was a place where mining and expansion were continuously being carried out. So those are a safety helmet, safety shoes, safety gloves, stuff like that. But even so, it was the legacy of the ancient dwarves. Moreover, the work clothes were strong and firm in the first place, so it was perfect to use as an armor. But it's too big. It was just an average-sized safety helmet in the ancient dwarves' standards. Whereas when Cordelia used it, the safety helmet became like a large pot that was flipped over. Jude tried to hold back his laughter that was about to leak out, and afterwards, he likewise rummaged through the shelves. Look carefully, even if those are work clothes, it's a safety set, so there should be ones for children too. The gloves and shoes size will be adjusted automatically. As Jude had said, there were several safety sets prepared for children in the corner of the shelf. But you look like a chick. Hey, aren't you wearing the same clothes as me? The safety hat, safety shoes, safety gloves, and vest were all yellow. As it was work clothes, it was made to stand out. Are there any combat uniforms? It wouldn't fit even if this place have those. Children obviously wouldn't have combat uniforms. Besides, I think this is good enough. Like the equipment of ancient dwarves, both the gloves and shoes were enchanted with magic. The gloves increase muscle strength, does the shoes increase agility? Cordelia said as she jumped in place. She jumped much higher than usual to check if it really worked. Good, I like it, this should be enough for a while. After Jude tried his footwork skill, he looked down at his feet with a satisfied look. Safety shoes weren't usually sturdy, but with these shoes, the attack power of his kicks would now become much stronger. Let's open the inside quickly. The power spear used to defeat the white snake in the original story was stored behind the second door, which was the true armory. Okay, just wait for a second. Jude immediately opened the door by operating the number panel of the second door. And then, the original story's event occurred. This is Jarmu, the person in charge of the armory. Please listen to my story. A translucent ancient dwarf appeared right in front of the door and spoke in a dignified voice. It was a holographic image, not a ghost, and as Jarmu said, he was a kind of artificial intelligence that managed the armory. It has no physical body, so let's just pass through it. Besides, his story is just the armory's general story. Jude said that and tried to pass through Jarmu. Wait a second. Cordelia held Jude's hand and looked at Jarmu with a troubled look for a moment. Afterwards, she immediately spoke to Jude again. Don't do that, let's listen to his story. Story? This was like that in the Witch's Forest. You remember how I went through a lot when I just skipped it, right? In addition, there was a cinematic movie at the event when you get the power spear. Wouldn't it be difficult for us if there was something that was not known in the video again? Cordelia's words were quite reasonable. Therefore, Jude nodded without hesitation. It's possible. Hey, wasn't that my line? Let's listen to it then, we have plenty of time anyway. Having made up his mind, Jude took a vest from the shelf, spread it out and made it as a mat. Ma'am, please sit down. Yes, Dad. Cordelia squatted next to Jude before looking up at Jarmu, while Jude prodded Jarmu to begin talking. Jarmu, tell us your story. May I talk to you? Yes, we'd like to hear your story. At Jude's words, Jarmu looked to be quite moved. Although it was an artificial intelligence, it seemed to possess some emotion and ego. I understand. You have an excellent eye for showing interest in my story. So this story begins in Frost Anvil 4, when I first opened my eyes in the armory. When Jarmu hurriedly began to talk, Cordelia unconsciously turned to Jude, and Jude looked back at Cordelia. Somehow, the two had an ominous feeling in the beginning, as if they had heard of this somewhere. And 5 hours later, their prediction became a reality. It looks like my ears are bleeding, Cordelia said with a dying face after hearing all of Jarmu's stories for 5 hours. If they dozed off in the middle, Jarmu repeated the story again from that point, so they were forced to concentrate. Looking back at Cordelia leaning her head with a tearful face, Jude spoke in surprise. Hey, your ears are really bleeding. Ray, really? Is it just me? As Jude clicked his tongue, Cordelia regained her energy and began hitting Jude's back. It hurts. I told you before, right? It hurts when I hit you, right? I'm going to hit you again, okay? In any case, the two began stretching before they stood up from their seats. In the end, it was just some meaningless chat. No, well, it wasn't really that unhelpful. They heard a summary on how to use the weapons stored in the armory. Furthermore, Jarmu seems to be satisfied too. You're right. As Jude had said, Jarmu had a refreshing expression while he stood with his eyes closed, as if he had solved a 1,000-year-old problem. If it was not an artificial intelligence but a ghost, it would have already ascended immediately. Now then, let's go quickly, I'm feeling sleepy. Yes, let's just grab the weapons and take a rest for today. The two entered the true armory while yawning, but it was only for a short time. There are 5 power spears. Wouldn't these be useful for us too? While Cordelia admired the power spears that she saw lined up on the wall, Jude spoke as he looked at the daggers. Look at this, there's knuckles too. Try it on to see if it fits your hand. Rather than knuckles, it's more like a power fist. Jude put on the gauntlet that covered the back of his arm, and then clenched and opened his fist several times. There weren't any decorations as the ancient dwarves had a plain taste. And at the moment Jude wore the gauntlet, it reminded him of the first time he had lifted a gun, which had the distinctive heavy feel of a lethal weapon. What do you think? Do you think you can use it? Yes, it's good. Does it have a left arm too? Here. Cordelia ran like a squirrel grabbing acorns, and then she brought a power fist from the other side of the room. Good. This will make it easier to use the power spear. Is that right? How much do you think your attack power has increased? Is it about 1.2 times of your muscle strength? What about the options? How should I say this? You're really a rotten water. Tusk, on that subject, I've become oil. Tien, just like how rotten water is higher leveled than stagnant water, there are also other Korean terms to signify how long a person plays and masters a game. Other terms include skeleton water, fossils, oil, asphalt, etc. So Cordelia is pretty much saying that she's already reached the oil level and no longer just rotten water. Cordelia grumbled, but she soon smiled brightly and looked inside the armory again. Because the ancient dwarves were mostly warriors, there wasn't much useful stuff for Cordelia, who was a wizard. But she looked happy in just finding equipment for Jude to use. Is it the feeling of changing the items of a fellow character in RPGs? Jude giggled and then looked at the power spears again, which were the reason why the armory existed. The spear's outer appearance had a simple design in which a huge spear blade was attached at the end of the long spear, but its internal structure was quite complex. It emits the charged psionic energy through the spear's blade. The output was also freely adjustable, and when fired at maximum power, it was more like a beam gun rather than a spear. In fact, it can only be used once per spear, but there are 5 spears here. Jude nodded with a cheerful face as he took the power spears, while Cordelia groaned as she brought stuff like a hammer, mace, and a great sword. They didn't have anyone that could use those stuff right away, but she thought that it was such a waste to leave those behind. "You're like a real squirrel." "How's me?" "Yes, you're like a hamster." She stuffed her mouth with food that she would eat later. Hoarding is a typical hamster behavior in which a hamster will stuff as much food as it can in its cheek pouches and run off to store the food in a hiding place where it would eat the food later. So Cordelia hoarding the items made Jude compare her to a hamster. "I don't think that's a compliment, so let me hit you once first." "Hey, you can't do that. For now, let's take a break here today, eat breakfast tomorrow morning, and go straight to the power room where the sunflower will bloom." There was also a secret passage there, right? There was. The flow from the original story was as follows. On the 7th floor, the main character and their party encountered the white snake and accidentally discovered a secret passage during their fierce battle. Once the party entered the secret passage to avoid the white snake, they obtained clues about the armory from the dead bodies of the ancient dwarves, and then used the secret passage to enter the armory and secure a power spear that could defeat the white snake. So if we use the secret passage, we can go straight to the power room where the white snake and sunflower is. But we won't be using the secret passage now, as we'll be going up and down the 3rd floor to conduct a straightforward attack first, right? Of course. If they defeated the white snake now, their levels would rise a few times, but the experience points efficiency of the miscellaneous monster mobs between the 3rd and 6th floors would only get worse. The experience point system of Legend of Heroes was somewhat mixed with absolute and relative values points. The system calculates the basic absolute points granted based on the level differences of the player and the enemy. So if the player's level is low and the monster's level is high, the player can get more experience points depending on how far the difference in levels between the two have. We have to think about gathering dirt to make a big mountain. That's right, that's right. The thoughts of the two were in perfect harmony with each other. Because it's not that urgent. Even if we sweep the monsters from the 3rd floor down, the white snake will still be in hibernation. As its name suggests, the white snake is a white snake. To be exact, it was the demonic monster of Leviathan, the ancient great monarch who drove Frost Anvil into ruins, but in any case, the fact that it was a snake did not change. And the snake is a cold-blooded animal that is sensitive to cold temperatures. The white snake was the true reason on why Frost Anvil became a freezer in the first place. The temperature was extremely lowered in order to confine the white snake in Frost Anvil. They couldn't let the demonic monster out of this place. So they decided to confine the monster here. It was a heroic decision made by an unknown ancient dwarf. Even if it was in a weakened state due to not getting proper nutrition for 1,000 years, the white snake was a demonic monster that possessed an extremely powerful strength. So when it invaded Frost Anvil during its prime, the powerful and imposing white snake was said to be truly terrifying. The white snake that was normally asleep would wake up for a while to consume the enormous amount of yang energy that is generated when the sunflower blooms. Isn't that the setting? Yes, so it would be asleep for now. In the game, they reached the 7th floor a day after the sunflower had bloomed, but in their current situation, they could arrive there a few days ahead. So let's thrust and bang the power spear into the head of the hibernating bastard. Even if its body was several tens of meters long, the monster wouldn't be able to do anything if it was in hibernation. Wow, we'll really eat it raw. So you don't like it? No, I love it. Eating it raw is the best. I want to eat it raw every day. Please let me eat it raw. May 2. Jude and Cordelia looked at each other and broadly smiled as the two hummed and exited the armory. In the morning 3 days later, the two reached the 7th floor after wiping out all the monsters that existed between the 3rd and 6th floors, and the giant white snake that had terrified the entire Frost Anvil for a long time suddenly met a mysterious death.